Right, I think we can now make a start. People are joining, but as I do the introduction, it'll give the time for the rest of the people to be there. Welcome to you all, wherever you're joining from. I know what's wonderful when we do these webinars, we have people joining from kind of all around the world, which is great to see that interest. And welcome to our first webinar of 2022. It's great to be speaking to you today. It's great to be speaking to you as ski resorts across the Alps are open, and combine that with some fantastic snow conditions. I have heard from various different sources, from guides I've been with, people in the industry, how it's been the best start the season back in December for sort of 30 years, once in a generational stuff, or anything around that. So it's just great. And also the other good bit is we have had people who've been out there, enjoyed it, and come back, and the feedback has been excellent. So that is wonderful news. The plan today is to do a quick 20+ minute discussion with our panel, who I'll introduce you to in a minute. And this will be followed by a Q&A. Felix, our marketing manager, is manning the Q&A, so please do post them on here. He will answer some of them as we go along, and others I'll answer at the end. And if we don't get back to you, do not worry, we keep all the details. Your question will be answered. So it's a pleasure to introduce our panel, and all of you who have joined us before, and thank you therefore all for returning. I see that as a good sign. So from Austria, Irmgard Huber from the Lech Zurich Tourist Office. Lech is consistently one of our top destinations as a luxury ski resort in Austria, linked to the wider ski area of St. Anton and Varth. The Lech Zurich St. Anton Varth ski area is the largest in Austria. It's fully open at the moment. It's great to have people enjoying these slopes again and these resorts again. From France, Christelle Ferrière, marketing director for the Savoie Mont Blanc region. A big task because it covers some big ski resorts. I won't name them all, but the likes of Chamonix, Val d'Isère, in the Three Valleys, Courchevel, Méribel, Val Thorens, Saint-Martin de Belleville, to name but a few. And I have to say at this stage, Christelle, thank you to France for opening up the borders to the UK again. And it's been wonderful seeing the welcome back messages from your various resorts. I will admit, I never absolutely imagined I would see the day that École de Ski Français in Méribel would do a torchlit descent in the shape of a heart with the Union flag in the middle. It was very special to see, and I think it just highlights the relationship we have when it comes to the mountains and skiing with all these countries, and also that perhaps skiing is above politics. So thank you to your resorts for being so welcoming now that it's all open again. And Alex Herman from Switzerland, Director of Switzerland Tourism for UK and Ireland, a big task, and it's great to always have you here. There was an uncharacteristic wobble from Switzerland just at the beginning of the season, which was a bit heart-stopping. Thankfully, it only kept us on our toes for a week, but the country has remained calm since, and I would say is championing, as fewest restrictions as possible and allowing people in and when in resort, which is encouraging for all of us, to all countries to follow. So well done, Switzerland. So yeah, I acknowledge it's been a bumpy start. There have been some disappointments. There have been some people who haven't got away skiing, and that is frustrating for anyone. But it is all open, which is great. And I've been fortunate enough to be out a few times and enjoy the mountains for why we all love them. So the questions we're going to ask are sort of based around the conversations that we receive daily in the office. Our team here selling holidays to people in all these fantastic destinations are asked these questions. And I think it's important we share them, because that is perhaps the concerns of skiers or people looking to go. But let's just start with, how's the season gone so far, and how are things like out in the resorts? Irmgard, perhaps with you, how are the snow conditions? How is the skiing with you?
Well, the conditions are really good. We had many really sunny, cold days. in the past, and I think the best is we get a snow in the next few days, and so the conditions will be perfect also for February, March then. And we are so happy about that.
That's fantastic. In your part of France, Christelle, and again, how are the snow conditions been? What's the forecast? What's going on the slopes?
Well, I'm kind of like the same as in Austria. We've had some pretty good snowfalls at the beginning of the winter, and actually 2 amazing weeks of sun, but very cold. So it kind of maintains the snow conditions. And hopefully we have some snow coming by the end of the week and in February. So yeah, everything will be perfect to welcome our British guests.
That's great, and good to have that snowfall hopefully coming in time for February. And it's similar in Austria. I'm sorry, in Switzerland, Alex. Would be the same picture.
Pretty similar. We get very similar weather than our friends and neighbors. We had the wobble in the beginning of the season that was a little bit difficult for December, but then after that there was an avalanche basically of bookings because we got a lot of very good press from people who went to Switzerland early in the season. And just yesterday, for example, in the Telegraph, there's a piece with the title, "The reality of skiing in Switzerland right now is one of jubilant normality." So people enjoy the fact that once you're in the resort and on the slopes, life is almost like normal, like in the past. So a great start to the season since the holidays and now into January, and it looks very good for the next few weeks and couple of months.
And picking up on that bit about normality, for people who've been away, God, for the general feedback from those who have been on the holiday this year, wherever they're from, how's that been? Has it been, what have you heard back from those holiday makers?
Well, I feel that people, as we are all of us more or less like in a bubble, they feel really safe, and once they start enjoying being here, being in the mountain, being in the nature, and I look around, I feel, well, I don't feel or see anything about any concern about Corona. So I think this is very important that people get the feeling again, life can be also joyful, really joyful.
That's good to hear, because of course, when you're sitting reading some of the news headlines or the press or whatever you pick up, it gives you a certain perception, but that isn't necessarily the reality of what's happening in a ski resort, in the mountains. It might be in the same country as you're reading the headlines about. We know France had some big headlines of COVID cases, but the reality is, what's it like in the resort itself? I mean, if we sort of move on to that bit about COVID and reality of it, what would you say, Christelle? I mean, how is the vibe at the moment in the resort when it comes to COVID? What is it very prevalent, or is it quite sort of relaxed?
I would say it's actually quite relaxed. And I was going to say, actually, you were talking about a positive kind of bubble, Imgard. Actually, for us, the bubble is twice as positive, because if you remember last year, we didn't have any ski lifts open. So we were kind of frustrated about what we could do on the slopes. And I've been in December in Les Arcs, for instance, and I can tell you that, yes, there are some constraints of wearing the mask in the queue on the lifts. But God, it feels good to go down the slopes, and everyone kind of forgets once they're there and they know the constraints. And we're kind of, everyone is used to it by now, of having some constraints in their daily lives. So on your holidays, it's just the fun and enjoying yourselves. You know the constraints. It's quite easy to go by, and I have seen lots of smiles again in the ski resorts, and people just happy with their time, and the snow condition was good. So yeah, I think it's really this double positive bubble that you have to remember. Actually, for us French people, it's actually quite a relief to be skiing, and we're quite happy with the conditions.
It's lovely to see that positive smile on your face, because that's exactly what's happening. I mean, I think all across any country, there are similar restrictions, as you mentioned, the face masks, the things that we're quite used to. But Alex, do you think any restrictions that are in place, talking about the skiing experience here, are having any negative impact for holidaymakers? Because people keep saying to us, is it the same as normal? Is it the same as normal? I mean, what would be your answer to that?
It's almost the same as normal. You have to show your COVID certificate or your NHS pass when you go into a restaurant, for example. As my colleagues already mentioned, here and there you have to wear the mask. But things like, for example, capacity limits in the gondolas, that's compensated by just running the gondolas more often, things like that. So the actual experience from everything we hear in the resorts is the same. The Swiss resorts had the advantage that we could play this already last year and learn a lot last season, how to handle the whole operation during COVID. And it worked very well last year, but still there was a lot of learnings. And so some of the resorts still have these so-called COVID angels or some other stewards or so to make sure that people, the way they queue, etc., that this is supported. But as my colleague said, once you're on the slope, it's exact same experience, maybe a bit better because there's still, of course, between the main, like the holidays, half term, etc., there's of course still space in the slopes.
That's true. And it's interesting because some of those things you point out, we've discussed in previous webinars, like the planning for what will happen when it opens and, the way that the capacity on lifts might work or the distancing. But now it's being played out for real. So actually all that forward planning seems to have benefited everyone. And yes, one can learn from Switzerland, which opened last year. And would you say that is very much the case in Austria, that everything seems to be running as smoothly and as efficiently as it could be for regardless of these small COVID requirements?
I would say in general, yes. I think it is. I mean, when you walk on the road or when you go skiing, you see happy people, people move, people meet and greet, and I think that's also what people want. People want to have a kind of normality, and yeah, of course we wear the masks, but beside that, pretty much all. I would say everything is going well.
That's good. I'm not today going to get into the detail of, say, I mean, there are still a few travel restrictions in place, and we know there's some entry requirements in place for some countries. Switzerland, none at all now. UK, none at all now. But there are still some testing requirements, of which I'm not going to detail because it really varies from country to country where you're starting from. And of course, we can answer those questions as people specifically have them and do come back to us. But I generally see these things relaxing kind of almost week by week as resorts seem to be able to realize what they can cope with, or countries can realize what they can cope with. But actually, one thing I think we are asked about a lot, we should just mention briefly, is the pass sanitaire, the COVID or vaccination pass, as it now is, this requirement to show which if you're an a UK citizen, you can use your NHS app for it to show that you've been vaccinated. And people are saying, how strict is that? Is that being asked everywhere you go? Christelle, for example, in a mountain restaurant, is that something they would be asking before going into a mountain restaurant?
Yes, for restaurants, for bars, it's actually everywhere in France. Actually, you have to show your pass, and it has been the case for ages. So yes, that's pretty mandatory in restaurants and in bars. But for the ski lifts, it's actually quite random checks that are made. So it's not automatic, but it can happen. So you have to have your pass with you. If a kid is not fully vaccinated, he can get a test every day, or has to get a test every day. That's kind of detailed. If you have any questions, we can answer afterwards. But I'd say that's the thing is that each resort has a responsibility to give the right information. So if you look up the resort that you're interested in as a visitor, there's usually information on the homepage where you can get tested, what are the rules, what's allowed, not allowed. So everyone is really up to date on the information, and everything changes like almost every day. But we will have hopefully some good news on the 3rd of February. So we have to wear the masks in the resorts, just like walking into the resorts in Savoie. But hopefully by the 3rd of January, maybe it will get looser again. So yeah, everything is up to date on the websites of each of the resorts.
That's good, and I can definitely vouch for that. The tourist offices all have fantastic COVID pages, great infographics, very sort of step-by-step, very user-friendly ways of understanding what the current requirements are. So well done everyone for stepping them up with that. But Alex, the same with you, just going back to that vaccination pass, that Swiss restaurants, checking for it and asking for it, is that something you're seeing quite naturally everywhere you go?
The approach of Switzerland has been in this entire time to have fewer restrictions, but then these restrictions are actually really enforced. So, for example, kids under 16, they don't need anything, so they're fine in Switzerland. You also, to buy a ski pass or to use any of the equipment or the ski lifts, etc., you don't need to show a COVID pass. This is not required in Switzerland. But then in the restaurant, you need to show it, and you don't just need the COVID pass. You need some kind of an ID with a photo on it. So you have to show both to make sure that this is all correct. And so indoors in the restaurants, you have to show your COVID pass. And technically, hotels would not need to require that, but it makes operations very complicated. So most hotels have now moved to still checking their guests' COVID certificates also upon check-in. Yeah. So then you can move freely in the hotel and join the breakfast buffet, etc., etc. But outdoors, once again, you can absolutely sit outside in the restaurant, and you don't need a COVID pass for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think that hopefully makes people understand it is a requirement. It's very easy to do, and we can help with that. That's the crucial bit. Just lastly, because it is the last for the COVID, last COVID question, I'll move on out of this. Just the testing. It is still a bit of a requirement for some people before they leave the country, before they go back into their country of origin, to get tested, and facilities therefore required for that. God, is that something quite easy for people to do in Lech, for example, to get, if they need a PCR test or an antigen test? Is that quite easily done by tourists?
Well, I would say so. If you register, then you go to the supermarket and you get this testing set, and then you do your test, and then you put it in the box, and then you get about in around 24 hours your result. This is for free, or there is also a testing center where you pay for a fee for it. So okay, there are two possibilities.
Two possibilities: a free one, great for many people, and for others, perhaps you can just pay a bit and feel like it's done better. And Christelle, I'll just on you, similar, or in the resorts in your area again, for good facilities for testing.
Yes, most of the resorts have actually opened extra testing centers. In Courchevel, for instance, in each of the villages, you have a testing facility, and some of the 4- and 5-star hotels also have the service of taking you to the testing test centers, or actually bringing in some nurses to get tests done. So yeah, everyone is really making the most of the stay for the visitors, and easier for them to get tested. You can get PCR tests or antigenic tests. It's a different price, of course, and also auto tests for little kids if they need to test every day, which are only €5. So it's everything is organized to make things easier for the clients.
Great. And actually, we've had plenty of clients travel, had some great times, have had to require testing. And there's all that variety. We've also hotels, chalets, doctors can come in, meet people privately. There's a variety of everything and in between. I guess what it says, don't worry about it. It's easily serviced and dealt with. It's a small requirement of your holiday. Don't make it a negative. It's not a problem. Let's move on to the rest of the season. Hopefully things keep opening up. It sounds like possibly more good news on the 3rd of February coming out of France. But there's still the whole of February, the whole of March, and April to go, and some great opportunities to get away. How are bookings looking like in resorts, in Switzerland for February's coming up? The holidays for many people. Are there still opportunities to get away, Alex?
Yeah, February is traditionally a busy month, because most parts of Switzerland have their ski holiday. They're called ski holiday. The schools are off for 2 weeks. And this is staggered. So basically during 4 weeks, basically all of February, you have some parts of Switzerland being on school holidays. And during that time, it's quite full. Then, of course, we have half term here in the UK during that time as well. So this is a very busy time. But in March, things look quite a bit different. So my recommendation would be to look into March. And I think we'll talk about that in a bit later. With Easter being late, some resorts actually decided to keep open longer, cover all the way through Easter. Some hotels might not be open during that time anymore, so the hotel offers might be a little reduced. But why not going to ski in early April for a change and enjoy the warmer sunshine, the longer days, and I mean, as long as you ski early in the morning, you still have really nice snow.
Absolutely. Christelle, I think my sort of summary from our end of the French opportunities to go is, because a little bit of umming and ahhing, particularly from the British side, actually there's still some great opportunities in February to get away too. In those holidays, we're seeing a few gaps.
Yes.
And would you agree with that?
Yeah, overall for the rest of the winter, we're only 5% down compared to 2 years ago, which was like a record year. And actually February, like the holidays, is quite flat. So it's pretty good for us overall, but there are some weeks where there are still some availabilities in February, definitely. Then March as well, same as in Switzerland and probably Austria as well. March and April are actually quite free, and being the opportunity to have slopes that are a bit less busy, and also great weather and great sun and warmer weather in April, which is actually quite interesting, as spring skiing is also quite good. So yeah, lots of possibilities yet.
Excellent, that's good. I mean, with Easter Day on the 17th of April, it is late. It's kind of as late as it gets. And I think therefore a lot of resorts are closing. I feel almost a week later than normal, some even a bit later than that. Irmgard, would you say actually the opportunity to really enjoy the season right up until kind of almost the end of April is there? Are your resorts pretty much open until that time?
Well, the Arlberg will close on the 24th of April. And what I hear from some hotels, that the bookings are not bad in April, because really people like, well, then they feel a bit safer later of the year. And I mean, we saw in the last year skiing in spring also always was great, and you have those long days. You have this period where you stay on the sun terrace, have your lunch with the view on the mountain. I mean, it's a really nice part of skiing in the springtime.
It's the time to really appreciate not just the skiing, but the lifestyle around it, the being in the mountains, yeah. On those days. And I couldn't agree more. I find, you know, we're clients at that time of year ski a longer morning and perhaps have a longer lunch. And actually, what we are happily pushing and actually pushing is, why not, you know, people have been away already once this year. Why wait until another 12 months time? You've still got, you know, another 3 months of this season to go. Go again. And actually, if you're a normal skier at Christmas or New Year, it's a different experience at Easter, and it's worth trying. And even if it's for a shorter break, perhaps just go out for a few days. It's very accessible. So look, great opportunities for this winter still. I agree. But just quickly looking ahead, I know it seems almost crazy to be doing that, but this time of year, we have people who didn't go skiing or didn't go away at Christmas say to us, oh my gosh, I'm never staying at Christmas at home again. I'm going to go away next year. I don't want to do the cooking. I want to go and be looked after and spoiled and stay in a lovely chalet or lovely hotel. Are resorts already thinking about next year? You know, are prices out for next year? Alex, how does it work from your side? What do ski resorts say when I want to come back next year? What's the reply?
I think they're still quite busy with this year, maybe a little bit behind, but it's only a question of a few weeks or so, then they should be ready. And I would, of course, recommend to book early, especially for the key times around the holidays, February, etc. What happened in Switzerland over the last 2 years is that some people rediscovered skiing. So the domestic market has been growing a bit. So some of the people who used to go to beach destination over the winter couldn't do that over the last 2 years and rediscovered the snow. So skiing has become again more popular domestically. So there's more demand, and also from many of the neighboring markets we've seen quite a bit of increase now. Finally, also from the UK, but you know, the French, the Germans, the Italians. well, French, they have beautiful ski resorts, of course, as well in their own country, but some of them still come to Switzerland. So we had a very successful year so far, and just I would recommend people book early.
Book early to avoid disappointment. Christelle, perhaps it is still very much living in now and serving this season, but are you already in discussions for next winter and planning ahead?
At our level, we're starting to think about it, but I'd say that everyone is quite busy making this winter a success and welcoming our guests. So it's a bit early to ask this question, but hopefully everyone will be ready quite quickly for next year. And actually, there is this one big thing happening to us next year, which I know some of the resorts are already working on, which is Courchevel and Méribel. We have the World Championships next year in March 2023. And there's kind of a big rehearsal in March 2022 with the finals being handled in Courchevel and Méribel as well. So at least these two resorts must be thinking ahead and a year and a half early.
Yeah, perhaps that's an event to go and see the rehearsals of the finals this year. I think, from our side, we are definitely making bookings for next year, and it starts swinging that way. We're sort of at 50, we're an eye on both at the moment, which is exciting because people come back and I want to rebook, I must go again, and then there are those who want to go again now. So it's a bit of both, and let's try and do a bit of that. So I think that's the last of the questions I got from the panel. Just a couple of direct questions. Christelle, one for you, based on talking about how busy the bookings are for this winter in February. Do you anticipate it to be lots of people too busy in February queues, or do you think it will be manageable?
I'd say from the figures, it should be manageable. There is no reason why there would be a huge peak. There is still some possibilities. Everything is made for the experience to be good. So I'd say there's no limit to the appetite you might have to come to the French Alps this winter. Everything is handled smooth, so everything works smoothly in terms of the COVID or the traffic.
Yeah, great. I think that's true. And I remember my first time I was in Val d'Isère half-term February 2 years ago, it must be 3 years ago now, expecting it to be really busy, but actually in the first morning, all the children there at ski school, parents crying, children having fun, all chaos. That normal first day, but then suddenly very quickly it was just calm and everyone had gone. And actually it was nothing like I had kind of expected, because everyone is so prepared for these peaks and troughs in the season that it ran very, very smoothly. Other questions? Have ski schools managed to run as normal with the sort of COVID and testing and everything going ahead as normal at Irmgard? Is it just back to business as usual for ski schools?
Yeah, also they prepared themselves very well, and also in the peak season of Christmas and New Year's Eve, they really did a good job, also in the children classes. So yeah, everything's fine. We are prepared, and also for the people who come in February, March. Yes,
I think exactly. So many families traveling that time. Lessons are at a peak, I suppose, and a crucial part to those families are lessons for adults and children. So people understanding to know it's all going to be as normal. And definitely, my advice on that is people just book in advance. Get yourself ahead. Because it is busy, but just get the lessons, whether it's a private instructor or group lessons, whichever you choose, definitely book in advance. Yeah. There's a couple of questions specifically on COVID passes, which I'm going to answer. Yes, as discussed earlier, you do need this vaccination pass, this QR code, which you can get very easy, I can tell you afterwards, to access restaurants, bars, public spaces, and occasionally, as in random checks on ski lifts, in general, so be prepared for that. That's the only real requirement outside of masks that people must have when they're on a holiday, I think, in any of these countries in Europe at the moment. But I think for now, I think that's it. We've been talking for 30 minutes. If I was going to summarize it from listening to what the three of you have kindly said, everything is really fantastic. There's a lot of people very happy, having wonderful holidays, big smiles on their faces. and the feedback is good. And actually, if it is the bubble of a ski resort, or just what skiing does anyway, is put smiles back on people's faces, and the reason why people like doing it, there is no reason whatsoever not to get yourself back out there. And there's plenty of good opportunity to go, whether it is still, you know, holidays in February, or perhaps the off-peak times in March, or right up through to the end of the season. So I'm pleased it's working well for you all, and all in your resorts, and long may that last. And hopefully we'll see you out there ourselves at some point. So thank you, Alex, thank you, Christelle, and thank you, Armgard, and have a wonderful rest of the season. And goodbye, and thank you all for joining.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Rupert.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.